Prisoners is a deeply haunting and very realistic film that tries to answer the question, how far does somebody have to be pushed before they break their morals? And that is what we are going to be looking at today in this video. I will be discussing spoilers, so if you have not seen Prisoners, make sure you do before watching this video. That question is answered by almost every character in the film, but the emphasis is put on two characters above all else, Keller Dover and Detective Loki. We are first introduced to Keller Dover, so we are going to start off by looking at him. The opening lines of the film are the Lord's Prayer, which signifies he is accepting the Lord's teachings and will follow in his footsteps, trying to be as holy and devout as he can be. His religion is later reinforced when we see him driving moments later and a Christian cross hangs from his rear view mirror. While in the car with his son, he tells him about the importance of being prepared, of knowing how to deal with a situation when it arises. Yet despite him being prepared for almost anything, when a situation that he isn't prepared for arises, he doesn't know how to act and what to do. We soon find out that he is a carpenter,
barely get enough carpentry work to keep up with the mortgage.
The same as Jesus Christ, so it should be clear that he has strict moral guidelines on how to live his life. He puts strict guidelines on his children and tries to raise them as well as he can. In addition, he is a devout patriot who cares about his country, which is signified by his adoration of the Star-Spangled Banner.
He actually loves the Star-Spangled Banner.
Throughout the film, we see these cornerstones that define him early in the film start to crumble as his life is plummeted into chaos. Previously in the series, I have looked at what it means to be a perfect protagonist, one who has clear moral intentions and sticks to these morals above all else. Keller Dover is not one of those characters, or at least doesn't appear to be one. We first see him attack Alex in the parking lot when he's trying to restrain him to try and figure out where his daughter went. This act is forgiven in both the eyes of the law and the eyes of the Lord. However, after he kidnaps Alex, this is where his faith is questioned. On the drive to the house, we see his cross hang from the rearview mirror begin to sway back and forth. This is a literal representation of his faith that we see swinging back and forth. It's no longer steady. As for what he ends up doing in terms of the law, he won't be forgiven. At the end of the film, Grace realizes that because of what Keller did, he will spend the rest of his life behind bars, and all of it was for nothing. But eventually we find out that above all else what drives him isn't his faith or his love of America, but instead his family. The three other parents, Grace, Nancy, and Franklin, all choose to passively handle the situation, to try and let others solve it, but Keller takes the problem into his own hands. He feels like he can solve the problem more efficiently than the police who have to jump through obstacles, but when he takes action, he takes it. He does everything in his power to try and get his daughter back. Detective Loki, on the other hand, is the almost exact opposite. Whereas Keller had a very straight and narrow outlook on life, Loki is much more open to bending the rules instead of breaking them. He practices many different faiths. He wears a Masonic ring, he is first seen exploring Chinese zodiac symbols, and Loki is a Norse god. He's also willing to bend the rules to get things done. He is a character who has to do his job and is willing to do anything to get it done. He is governed by his own rules of life. He pays attention to the big picture rules of the world in the United States, but that is only to protect his own interests. This is a very mysterious character. Some people have speculated that he is the human form of a god, someone to help answer the prayers and solve the crime. And that's a very real possibility, but I think that who this character truly is someone who had a troubled past, who is very smart and turned out well. This is going to be speculation because we really don't know anything about him, but it's obvious to tell that at least to an extent, this character is unstable. He doesn't have a standard police job, instead he is a detective who is able to solve the problem despite there being little to nothing to help him solve it. In the past, he has solved every case that has been assigned to him, and was able to work diligently to solve this latest one. If I had to guess, I would assume that he had a troubled past, more than likely a troubled youth, because that's what this film focuses on. In the film, we see the repercussions of two children who were abducted, Taylor and Alex, and we see that both of them are in a bad condition. The traumatic experience stunted their development and caused them to become who they became. However, what if Loki is an example of someone who also had a traumatic experience growing up, maybe not being kidnapped, but what if something bad happened to him that stunted his growth socially, but resulted in him being more determined to solve the different cases? In the same way that Taylor started to draw mazes in an attempt to deal with his traumatic past, what if Loki was able to do the same, but his way of consoling his past was trying to help as many people out as possible? If you buy into this theory, it also paints a more positive future for the two girls. The film ends before we get to see too much resolution. We know that they are alive and back with their families, but we don't know the long-term consequences of what's going to happen to them. If we look at the historical precedent, it isn't going to be good. But if we look at Detective Loki, we can see that despite him suffering from a traumatic experience, he still turned out pretty well, and the girls could turn out just as well too. But let's explore his character in terms of what we actually know about him, not just mere speculation. First and foremost, we can see that he and Keller have the same end goal in mind, however, the way that they try and achieve it could not be any more different. Keller is someone who is very single-minded. He does things one way and doesn't push himself further than that. Keller thinks that the best way to find his daughter is to harm Alex, but Loki knows that that is a dead end. Keller is willing to look only in one direction, but Loki is someone who will look anywhere to try and find the solution to the problem at hand, and in the end, that is what succeeds. As for where his morals are, it's impossible to figure out where he draws the line and where he doesn't. On one hand, he is willing to break into the priest's house, which is a direct violation of the Fourth Amendment. On the other hand, he doesn't hold Alex longer than he is allowed to reassure Keller. It seems like where he draws the line is where human rights violations occur. If there's a direct impact on someone's life, he won't go for it. But if it only affects privacy, that is where his limits are. This is a movie that examines morality to try and find its breaking point, and it discovers that where the situation is dire enough, the rules that once governed your entire life could be washed aside in place for your true human instinct. Thank you so much for watching. It was a lot of fun covering this movie, and this is a video that people have been asking for a while, and I'm so glad that I could finally deliver on it. Make sure you drop a comment and tell me what you think about this movie. I'm interested to know. Next week we are going to be looking at Anomalisa. I'm very excited to cover that movie. I'm going to leave a link to that on the right of the screen. On the left is my last video and we covered The Revenant. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Saturday.